Hello and welcome to the Football League Weekly, a weekly show looking into everything happening in the world of the Football League. And this week we have a lot to guide you through. We have the final day in both League One and League Two tomorrow. I have no idea where to start. I have no idea what the show will look like. It'll be an absolutely hectic weekend. But as always, we'll start in the Championship. And before I do that, how are you, Rhys? And yeah, it's going to be a very busy weekend, isn't it?
Well, we were going through notes what we just sort of about an hour ago prior to this, and we were both going, there's just so much volume to go through. There's all three teamless seasons. There's been notable sort of absentees out of both three of those teams. There's so many possibilities in terms of final day as well. Even tomorrow, you look at the situation, we'll touch more on Colchester and Sutton, and that's going down to something that we very rarely see. But you look at the season as a whole, it's gone so quick. It feels like yesterday that we were at Portman Road and we were at Exeter celebrating promotion. And now here we are. It's been an absolute roller coaster for most teams, really, in all three divisions. It's gone so quick.
And it doesn't feel right that the season's almost finishing because personally, I don't follow the Premier League at all. But I was watching the Premier League last night. It feels as though it shouldn't be finishing soon. Like the season has gone so quickly. And yeah, I mean, we might as well start with the promotion picture in the Championship because as it stands, Leicester are top, Leeds United are second, and Ipswich Town are third. Leeds United do have a game in hand over Ipswich, so if Ipswich win their 3 remaining games, then they should go up, but they do play Hull next. But before we go on to Ipswich, let's talk about the top team, Leicester City. And my controversial opinion about Leicester is that they haven't set the world alight. They've just managed to grind through results that they need. They were very impressive against Southampton, but I'm still not overly enamoured by them. So let's quickly talk about Leicester's win over Southampton. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it's a sort of win that realistically Leicester needed. I mean, I thought it's one-way traffic from the start, but you look at Leicester's season as a whole, and we shouldn't forget that sort of 2 months ago, before all these embargoes sort of crept up and before the point deductions became so vivid, that we were talking about this Leicester side being the best team the Championship has ever seen, especially in recent times. And we're sitting here now and we're still going, it's a very strong team, but even Leicester fans are now, with what's online, are now even doubting their team as well. They're calling the brand of football that Maresca sort of institutes, they're calling it boring. There isn't too much in terms of going forward. It seems to be possession for possession's sake, very similar to, of course, Paul Lambert. But you look at Leicester's season as a whole, and it's really sort of fascinating to see how up and down they have been. Because let's not forget, 2 months ago, they were 15, 18 points clear. And the fact that us, Leeds, and Southampton, to an extent before that hammering, all could have caught up to them. It goes to show you what a crazy league the Championship is.
And I think my problem with Leicester is that Maresca hasn't necessarily garnered a connection with the fans. Because you look at a lot of the Leicester managers in the past, and I'm going to include Brendan Rodgers when I say this, but a lot of them have did develop a relationship and the backing of the fans. But, since the beginning of the season, Maresca hasn't really managed to do that. And we saw Wout Faes a couple of weeks ago even put something out against the manager and against their own fans on Twitter. So when we see those kind of things, you do have to worry about Leicester. Leicester, I reckon they'll get promoted. But the big question I want to ask you, Rhys, is it all fine and dandy if they do get promoted this season? Because let's remember, they have a transfer embargo awaiting for them if they go into the Premier League.
Yeah, next season, should they get promoted? That's because from here on, I know we have the game in hand over Leeds and Leicester, but realistically, the league now is Leicester's to lose, to be honest. They should go up as champions, not deservedly so, because of the way the season has panned out and the sort of embargoes that they're going to be faced with. But it is their league to lose. Look forward to next season. And part of this transfer embargo as well could be that they can't actually renew player contracts as well. So obviously I was talking a week about Jamie Vardy's contract and whether or not they'll be able to go through. You've got the likes of him. You've got Ricardo Pereira, who's been fantastic at right back this season. Kelechi Iheanacho, fantastic. You look at Patson Daka. I know there's been recent criticism of him, but still a fantastic striker. Those players' contracts, and of course Mads Hermansen in goal as well. You look at those contracts, and if they're not renewed, if you put that into a pot, then you put into the pot the fact that you have to sell players to meet this embargo as well. So the likes of Harry Winks and Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, who's been arguably Leicester's best player this season. You put that all together with a promotion and the picture and where they're going to be next season, it's going to be mad, to be honest with you. And say, for instance, they start on -3 points, Leicester, which could be easily something that happens next season. Suddenly it makes the other two promoted sides, whether that be Leeds and ourselves, Leeds and Southampton, whoever that may be, that gives them such an advantage going up as well. Because that Leicester City squad is going to look insanely different next season.
And you look at the likes of Dewsbury-Hall and Pereira, and there's no guarantee that I reckon they're going to stay, because a lot of good Premier League clubs might want them, especially if they are under transfer embargo, and they might be able to get a little bit from Dewsbury-Hall as well. So, yeah, it's going to be a very interesting summer for Leicester City as well. And let's talk about Leeds United in second place as well. This is going to be outdated by the time a lot of people are going to be listening to this. So bear with us if you are watching this, say, Saturday, for example. But Leeds United, tonight they play Queen's Park Rangers. Briefly, how important a game is that for Leeds?
It's an absolute massive game. If Leeds win that, it puts so much pressure on our game tomorrow against Hull. The game tomorrow against Hull is a massive game as it is. But I think both Leicester and Ipswich Eyes are on QPR. I know you look at that game and you can look at it in terms of the way both seasons have gone. To QPR should be safe by now. Leeds look to be on the brink of promotion. But if you look at their recent form, and especially their form at Loftus Road as well, there's certainly no easy game. It won't be a pushover for Leeds tonight or last night or whenever you listen back to this. So it's going to be a challenge for Leeds, but it's one that you expect them realistically to get 3 points from.
And finally, Ipswich, again, like Leicester and Leeds, they have a game in hand over Ipswich. Ipswich should have Wes Burns and George Hurst back for their game against promotion or playoff chasing Hull City. We were talking about this before we went on air, but that will be a very difficult game for them, won't it? So Ipswich, how do you see them faring this weekend? And am I fair in saying that I actually prefer them to get promoted via automatics over Leeds United?
110%. I think the playoffs is such a lottery as well. We talk about how impressive the top four has been as a collective. Let's say if Hull sneak into that 6th place, it's a very tough job when you look at the games at West Brom and Norwich to play in the final two. But Hull sneak in and they may win it. So the playoffs is a lottery. So no team realistically is going to want to settle for that, especially us when we've been punching above our weight as it is. I mean, you mentioned about Wes Burns and George Hurst being back for the trip to Hull, but realistically, even if they are on the bench, we can't expect them to really start unless we make playoffs. So it's going to take him a while really to get back to sort of match fitness and match sharpness. Because you look at West Brom's sort of last 2 games, and Hull are going to need one of these games for West Brom to lose. You look at tomorrow, West Brom are going away to Sheffield Wednesday. Then on the final day, they're hosting Preston North End. Not saying those are, again, 2 easy games, especially the Preston game. That can be a challenge. But you're looking at it, if you can realistically, West Brom should get 6 points from those. So if you can, 5th place is probably out of reach for Hull. Let's look at Norwich games. Let's see who they're facing. Well, we all know how good Norwich have been at home since the turn of the year. And tomorrow, they've got Swansea at home before a trip to Birmingham on the final day. So again, you're looking at those 2 games from a Hull point of view, and you're thinking, realistically, even if Hull beat us and then on the final day go down to Plymouth and get 3 points there, that's probably not going to be enough for Hull to sneak sixth.
And of course, good evening to everybody else in the chat as well. Get your questions in for the end of the show. We will, of course, be talking about League One and League Two as well, and what the final day looks like in both of those leagues. Let's talk about the Championship playoffs quickly before we go on to the news. Leicester City at the moment, they occupy 6th place. They have a 3-point cushion over Hull, with Coventry trailing them by 9 points. David Wagner is pleased with the team's position as they approach the Championship playoffs. If they win their next game against Swansea, then it will be confirmed they will definitely finish in the playoffs. I've been really impressed by Norwich, Rhys. What have you made of them recently? And look, I need to put my biases aside when I say this, but I favour them in the playoffs. What about you?
Yeah, they're definitely are the informed team. And when I praise Norwich, I'm going to slightly bend over just so you can't see my Ipswich badge, so it can't be taken out of context. But you look at sort of Norwich and how good they've been, especially since the change of the year. I mentioned their home form there as well. But when these players are fit for Norwich, the likes of Jonathan Rowe, Josh Sargent, Gabriel Sara, when the likes of these players are fit, Norwich realistically could have made a push for the automatic sort of promotion spots. But again, it's all ifs and buts. You look through sort of Norwich's season as a whole, and even that's had its sort of massive ups and downs as well. There's a big trend on Twitter at the moment. When Norwich win, they're Wagner in. When Norwich lose, they want him out again. And that is the sort of story of their season, to be honest. There was a debate online about who would you want in the playoffs if you could pick your team. And it's so hard because those playoffs, no matter who finishes in them, it's going to be so tight and it's going to be incredible. But even if Norwich get through, right? Even if they get through to the final, even if they go up through the playoffs. We mentioned it before, and I'm sure we'll mention it again in the next few episodes, but the gap between the Championship and the Premier League is at an all-time high. So no matter which pairing of three teams out, Leicester, Leeds, ourselves, and whoever finishes in the playoffs, no matter realistically, pick your teams, whoever you want to go for it. That's probably going to be the bottom three in the Premier League in a year's time.
And as Ballum says, Norwich have been promoted before, as we know, in the last few years. And again, like if they met Ipswich in the playoffs, then I would actually favour Norwich. I'm trying to hide my badge. Because, they have playoff experience. And I think Ipswich, they've lost to Norwich earlier on in the season, putting my biases aside. So I would personally favour them. Don't hate me, Ipswich fans. I still reckon we'll get promoted. Let's talk about West Brom as well in 5th place. West Brom at the moment, they are finishing in the playoffs. They do play Sheffield Wednesday this weekend, which will be a very difficult game as Corberan has stressed the importance of not underestimating Sheffield Wednesday, citing their form and recent competitiveness. West Brom, they've been very impressive as well. Their momentum has been absolutely fantastic as of late. So, real quickly, Corberan has mentioned about the threat that Sheffield Wednesday pose this weekend. We're both expecting them to beat Sheffield Wednesday, aren't we, and secure their playoff spot.
Yeah, realistically, I think you've got to look at that game, and it's probably one that's probably a stretch too far for Sheffield Wednesday to actually get anything from. I know if you're facing the West Brom side, the number one thing you want is to be at home, because West Brom's home form is a lot better than their away form, and if the two sort of matched up, West Brom would be promoted by now. That's how impressive they've been at the Hawthorns. But realistically, that's probably the game of the weekend, to be honest, at least in the Championship. Because the job that Danny Rule has done to get this Wednesday side out of the bottom three now, they've been stuck there since the very early days of the season. And I know we're talking about sort of might touch on the EFL awards ever so slightly, but for Danny Rule not to be nominated for a manager of the season, for me, it's quite surprising, to be honest. I know it depends on whether Wednesday actually stay up or not, but the job he's done and the momentum that he's got there, it's been fantastic. So I remember when he was first appointed, I remember coming on here and I said, you know what, when Wednesday get relegated, he's the perfect man to bring them back up. But now I'm sitting there going, they've actually got a very, very good chance of staying up. And if you'd have said that months ago, you'd been laughed at.
And again, they could easily beat well, not easily, but they could surprise West Brom and beat them, because they are a team at the moment who have got a lot of momentum as well. And Danny Röhl is actually playing brilliant football as well. But let's talk about some of the news at the moment. And look, we didn't talk about the Championship news last week, so we're going to talk about that as well. Some of the news that we've missed. First of all, Tom Cleverley has been appointed permanent manager of Watford. He is, of course, a former England player, 34 years old, and he has officially been named as new permanent head coach of Championship club Watford. Watford have started brilliantly under him. I don't think they've actually got a win yet under him. But again, he has actually steadied up their defence. He has improved results as well. And in an interview with BBC Sport, Cleverley highlighted his desire to rectify what he perceived as shortcomings in his playing career. He said, "Whereas I didn't have much ambition during my playing career, I have ambition to be a good coach." So, of course, Rhys, Watford at the moment sit 12th. They're out of the playoff picture. But Tom Cleverley mentioned his ambitions as a coach. What do you think of the appointment of Tom Cleverley as new head coach at Watford? And again, I hate saying this, but how long do you think it will last?
He'll be at the job centre by September, won't he? Let's be honest, it's Watford. He'll be gone within a month. But being genuine, a second joke aside from Watford, it's probably a really, really sort of smart appointment, to be honest. It's one of those where he's came in, he steadied the ship. I mentioned at the time a couple of shows ago how impressive I thought his coaching was when Watford came down to Portman Road, and how sustained they look and how much of a team effort it really was. So he's gone in there, and it's quite obvious, realistically, to see the impact that he's had. He's been able to unite that dressing room. He's got everyone pushing in the same direction. As a first job for Cleverley, I think it's, if we take the manager circus away from Watford, forget that actually exists, and look at Watford as a club, I think it's actually a really smart sort of first job, to be honest. I know they've got the whole managerial circus and whatnot, but they're a club that's summer, anything can happen. They could go out, they could sign anyone they want to, and they could be looking like a fool in a couple of months' time. But there's no pressure on them realistically to make top six next season. So it's all about sustainability, which as a new coach is exactly what you want. As long as you stay up next season, play football the good way, get everyone united again, and to get fans back on side, that's realistically the only expectation he's going to have on them. I know it's a little bit naive perhaps to say there's no pressure on top six next season, but the Championship gets stronger every year. This isn't a Watford side that's been knocking on the door. This is a mid-table sort of Watford side. So realistically, as long as next season they don't get relegated, I don't see a reason why Tom Cleverley can't get time. But like I said, the ambitions of the ownership and the board of Watford have been questionable.
The only issue that I have is that Gino Pozzo at the moment, he has Udinese who are in a relegation battle, and he has Watford who have been underperforming as of late. So I wouldn't be surprised if the pressure ramped up for Watford next season just based on how his clubs are doing. Personally, do I think it's a good first job for him? It's risk-free, really, because even if Tom Cleverley did get sacked early on next season, I think a lot of people know what to expect with Watford. And a lot of people, I think, realise that Watford aren't necessarily a club who are going to keep their managers around for a long time. So, yeah, right club for him, a fan base who appreciates him, a fan base who will easily get behind him early on. But yeah, I mean, pressure's going to be on him early on next season as well, despite the fact that I do think it is a relatively risk-free job for him. And yeah, good evening to everybody else in chat as well tonight. We will be talking about the final day in League One and League Two soon. We have a lot of Championship news to get through as well, so give us your thoughts on the topics we are talking about. We will also be talking about the Championship team of the season at the very end of the show, so stay tuned for that as well. So, some old news for you, Rhys. Rotherham have reappointed big Steve Evans as their manager during their last game against Birmingham. Big Steve Evans put on his sombrero and unveiled himself to the Rotherham faithful. First of all, what do you think of Steve Evans as new Rotherham coach? And personally, with next season in mind in League One, and the fact that the Rotherham owners have said that they will be backing Rotherham next season, I don't necessarily think this is a bad appointment at all. But what do you think, Rhys?
It's excuse me. It's definitely not a bad appointment at all. When you look what Steve Evans done at Rotherham before, and it's quite clear to see why he's a fan favourite. It's quite clear to see why fans were excited by the appointment as well. And while we've got Ian Bradley in the chat, I'd love to hear your thoughts about it as well. But for me, it's almost a bit of a poison chalice in a way. I don't want to be negative about it all. But the job that Steve Evans done, let's not forget that this Rotherham side didn't compete this season. There's an absolute boatload of players in terms of Deadwood that need to be out that door, and there's a lot of recruitment in terms of bringing players in that needs to happen, just in my opinion, to be fighting again in League One. This squad realistically needs 3, 4, 5 years in League One to properly rebuild and to go from there. It's a massive sort of project at Rotherham at the moment. We're seeing the season, the amount of sort of batterings that they've taken and whatnot. So with this appointment, I just fear that the board are almost expecting an instant sort of promotion again and to get up and to survive, because that's really all Rotherham have been for the last few years. It's just been get up to the Championship, try to survive. But at the end of the day, what they need is 4 or 5 seasons in League One. So I just feel with the previous success that Steve Evans has had at Rotherham, will fans, A, be patient enough and not expect instant success, but realise it's a project? And will the fans actually accept that as well? I just hope it doesn't cloud the judgment of fans, this appointment, because they still need 3, 4, 5 years in League One to build a Championship squad that is actually competable.
And first of all, when Liam Richardson came to Rotherham last season, I didn't necessarily think that was an appointment that set the world alight. And Rotherham, look, they have one of the lower budgets in the Championship, or had one of the lower budgets in the Championship. But I think their recruitment as well didn't necessarily scream ambition. The likes of Lee Peltier, who in my opinion is past it, Sam Clucas as well, Cafu as well, who in my opinion has had an absolutely shocking season. They had Daniel Ayala as well, who they've now let go of. I don't necessarily think their kind of like transfer have been brilliant. So yeah, like simply, I'm not surprised that they are going down at all. And Steve Evans, I wonder. And again, I'm very interested to hear what our resident fan Ian thinks. But I think if Steve Evans had come into the squad earlier on, had been appointed earlier on, because let's face it, I didn't think they were going anywhere with Liam Richardson anyway, then it would be interesting to see where they would be. But yeah, I do rate the appointment of Steve Evans. But let's talk about Liam Richardson as well, because I've made my thoughts clear on him. What did you think about him getting the sack, Rhys?
Well, initially, because the 2 statements from Rotherham, they came relatively quickly. And so a lot of my comments that I saw made online definitely expired by the time they announced Steve Evans. But let's forget Steve Evans is there. I'll just focus on the fact of Liam Richardson. I don't understand why you'd sack a League One manager that's capable of promotion when you got down to League One. He's a manager, let's not forget, who got Wigan Athletic promoted in 2022 from League One to Championship. So he's definitely got the credentials, and he's definitely a manager that surely you would have stuck by. And now it's easy to say now Steve Evans has been appointed, you go, well, actually, okay, fair enough. But I wonder how much damage this actually does in terms of Liam Richardson's sort of managerial career as well, and how much damage it's going to have going forward on Steve Evans. Because let's be honest, this squad isn't good enough. And for me, I know you can talk hypothetically about if Steve Evans came in January, would he kept Rotherham up? I don't think Pep Guardiola would have kept his Rotherham side up. I just think that it was just too poor. There's too much dead wood. And when you look around that squad, and the only player that sticks out as championship quality is your goalkeeper, Victor Johansson, it definitely raises question marks. Because there's no one else in that squad, realistically, who's an asset, who you could sell on to bring money in. So you've only really got him. And let's be honest, he'll be off for a high-end championship move, I'd say, in the summer.
Yeah, and Johansson, in my opinion, and we'll talk about it later on when we do our team of the season, but personally, I'd have him as my goalkeeper of the season, but that's just me. But let's move on to League One. Again, we have a lot to guide you through today, so apologies if our analysis of the final day is a bit messy. But first of all, we will touch upon what has happened in League One, the teams that have been promoted and the teams that have been relegated, because Portsmouth have been promoted back into the Championship, and that was done in dramatic fashion a couple of weeks ago with a 3-2 comeback win against Barnsley. Portsmouth, Rhys, have been absolutely brilliant so far this season. They've had the right leadership. Their recruitment, in my opinion, has been absolutely fantastic. Their away performances as well have been amongst the best in League One. And they haven't had many injuries as well. And when they have, they've showed remarkable depth and resilience too. So what do you make of Portsmouth's season so far? And Machinio, what a fantastic job he has done.
As the sort of saying from Portsmouth fans goes, who needs Mourinho when you got Mousinho? I think the job that he's done has been absolutely sensational. We question the recruitment at Rotherham and how poor and how bad it's been. It's the complete opposite when you look at Portsmouth. If you look at their recruitment, the likes of Shaughnessy, Yengi, Paddy Lane, Abu Kamara, Alex Robertson, they're bringing the exact players that you need in that division. I know Robertson suffered with an injury, but looking online, every Portsmouth fan wants him back. It shows the impact that he's had. And you look at the players like Colby Bishop, 21 goals, Paddy Lane, 11 goals. You look at the assists. Abu Kamara has hit 10 assists on loan from Norwich. If Norwich failed to get promoted, I'd put money on the fact that Portsmouth could perhaps tempt him back, maybe with another loan. So it's been a long, long time since we've had Fratton Park back in the Championship, because that stadium by itself, the old sort of classic look of Fratton Park is fantastic. And after 7 years of sort of lingering in League One, being there or thereabouts, it's just fantastic to see Portsmouth back. They got the right people in the right places. And you sort of talk about ambitions and aims for next season. Realistically, it's a big step up. But again, if they survive, which I think they will, because they're playing football the right way under a really, really good manager, if they survive and just build from that, they could really be another force to be reckoned with.
And as Balam says, we could have Portsmouth versus Southampton next season. So how excited are you by the potential prospects of that?
It's been a long, long time, hasn't it? It feels like a while since we've had a good old South Coast derby. So that's going to be incredible, especially for the fans as well. I know that I don't do it in the chat now, but I've got a couple of Portsmouth fans as friends, and they're ecstatic for this. It's the feel good factor around Fratton Park is well and truly back. And these players that I've had on loan, Abu Kamara from Norwich and Alex Robertson from Man City, who's to say they can't tempt these players back?
And let's talk about second place as well. And this is where we're going to start talking about the final day in the EFL. Derby County, Paul Warne, during a press conference, he said that he is relying on experience and leadership for his squad to secure promotion back into the Championship. They do, of course, play relegated Carlisle United tomorrow at 12:30. 30, and they need just a point to get promoted. So look, Derby in League One, I reckon experience is what you need. And Derby, they have 12 players over the age of 30. How important have these players been for them, Rhys? Because Derby, they've been a standout team at times this season.
Yeah, look, Derby have been fantastic all season, and realistically, they may not even make top two. I know they've probably got the easiest on paper, on easiest the final game of the season. I know Bolton are away at Peterborough tomorrow, so realistically, you'd fancy Derby to get second place there. But I do question the squad itself. And let's say that the three that go up, if it's a top three, Portsmouth, Derby, Bolton, Derby are probably the ones I'm most worried about, and it is because of that aging squad. Yes, okay, in League One, you do need a bit of that. You need a good blend of that. But the Championship, you get found out really, really quickly. You can look at players like Sean Aluko with us, and suddenly misses a few games. Your instinct goes, you're not as fast as you used to be. You miss that sort of final yard as well. I mean, a player I want to talk about at Derby who I think has been incredible is Mendes Lang. He's a player that at times had question marks, but especially the last few weeks, he's been one of these players who has just stepped up and really produced the goods.
Yeah, and Derby again, I found it funny in his press conference how Paul Warne referred to them as crooked old bones. And these are very important players both in the dressing room and on the pitch as well. So again, hopefully tomorrow they will get promoted. But Bolton, as you just said, they are 3 points below them at the moment, and they will be playing Peterborough United. Quickly talk us through that, Rhys, because Peterborough at the moment are in 4th. How do you see this game going?
See, Peterborough are, I don't want to say a weird one, but they almost are in the fact that if you look at their sort of surprising defeat against Cheltenham, and you look at the squad that Peterborough actually fielded for that, the starting 11 in that fixture, and it was really weird. It was full of sort of kids and reserves, and it was almost as if they're throwing the towel in and accepting the fact that they're playing playoffs, which, okay, fair enough to an extent. I can understand fans' sort of frustration with that. They did have, of course, the EFL Trophy run, and they won that at Wembley, of course. But they are. I don't see why you'd chuck in your kids when you're going into a really, really tough playoff campaign, and surely having minutes in their legs and getting that winning sort of momentum and that winning rhythm is what's more important. So I'll be really intrigued to see what team they put out tomorrow against Bolton. And also about Derby having the easier game, could actually be flipped. Could Bolton have it? Because if Peterborough, again, if they make 8 or 9 changes, Cheltenham, who by no means, no disrespect, not the best club in the league by a long stretch, were much, much better than them and deserved that 2-0 victory. Who's to say that Bolton can't rock up, play a team like Peterborough, who will make these changes, and again go in by a similar scoreline? Whereas you look at sort of Derby v Carlisle game, and there's an old saying in football, isn't there, where you talk about teams with no pressure on them can sometimes produce the most upsets. So perhaps, is this the game against Peterborough that you want? I'd argue it's a favourable game.
Bolton is an interesting one. They were in League 2 not long ago, and I call their stadium the Reebok. Oh, and we forgot to talk about the FA Cup as well, and Coventry's games. We'll touch upon that at the very end of the show. Thank you for reminding us. And of course, the new rules too. But carrying on with League 1, because we're not talking about the Championship. Let's go all the way down to Barnsley. I say all the way down, but to Barnsley in 5th place, because they have parted ways with head coach Neil Collins with just 1 game remaining of the regular season. Barnsley risk dropping out of the playoff places if they fail to defeat Northampton Town in their final game, and Martin Devaney will take over as interim coach. Rhys, I know Barnsley's recent form has seen a significant decline, but their decision to sack Collins, especially at this time of the season, does, in my opinion, raise questions. So, first of all, what do you think of Collins being sacked? And do you think this will affect their chances of promotion?
Look, I know recent form has taken a massive dip, and perhaps if there's a Barnsley fan in the chat who'd like to give your thoughts, it'd be really interesting to hear from a Barnsley point of view. But looking at it from a neutral, I don't understand it. Where are the ambitions? So are they expected to compete from the ownership side with Portsmouth, Derby, and Bolton? Those three have been standout sides all season. So to compete with them is a really sort of long stretch, and it's a really big challenge. But we're about to head into a playoff campaign, and I just touched about it on Peterborough, of course. We're about to head into a playoff campaign. Why would you change a manager now? Why start to chop and change things that's going to halt your momentum at such a critical point of the season as well? They've still got a very tough game at home at Oakwell against Northampton, as you touched on. That's no easy game. And with both Lincoln and Oxford, possibly Blackpool as well, all on their shoulder, I don't understand the need to change now. If you want to make a change, make it after the playoffs, if they make it, which I think they should. Why make it just before a playoff campaign? I don't understand that, because surely that's doing more harm than good.
Yeah, and again, it's just the timing of it, really. And say they don't win tomorrow, they will look back at the moment they sacked Neil Collins and maybe regret their decision to sack him, because it's such a bizarre time to sack him. What I would have done if I was the owners, I would have kept him tomorrow. Had they have not won tomorrow, then maybe reevaluate and sack him. Very, very confusing timing, in my opinion. And again, it has raised questions, as I just said, with their fan base as well. But talking about teams who are struggling at the moment, we're going to go on to Port Vale. We will, of course, talk about some of the teams who could potentially get relegated tomorrow as well. But a team who already has been relegated is Port Vale, as I just said. And co-owner Carol Shanahan has expressed her continued support for manager Darren Moore, and this is despite the club's relegation from League One. First of all, what have you made of Moore's tenure so far at Port Vale? And again, fair enough for them backing Moore next season.
It's a really strange, because at the time of Dan Moore's appointment, we both sat here. I think opinion matched mine, and we said that's probably the momentum that they needed to sort of stay up. But now I look back at the appointment and I think, is it a job too soon? Is it a year too soon for Darren Moore to have jumped back into management? Did he perhaps need that sort of break after what had happened previously, to sort of take a break from football, to step away and to really get his head right again? Obviously, I know that's a very good benefit of hindsight. Of course it is, and you look back on that quite easily. But the feel-good factor went almost instantly. They failed to score in their first three under him. Only sort of got a point from that, lost two, drew one, followed up by 3 defeats. So it's been a really sort of miserable season. I know you can look at sort of Carabao Cup run, but really the only thing that Port Vale fans are going to look at right now is the league. And you couple that with what happened in July, and what we know what happened in July is that the fans' anger at what happened with David Filtcroft, who left the club after 3 years in charge of director of football there, and the anger that sort of came out of that, and then the season as a whole, it's been so it just sort of fizzled away, to be honest. And the one thing I thought would happen with Port Vale, with the appointment of Darren Moore, I thought it'd be more of a sort of spark. I was expecting that sort of that sort of feel factor. I was expecting a momentum sort of hit, a new manager bounce, if you will. It never sort of came, and they have just sort of fizzled away.
Yeah, and again, they're a team who've only, and I'm reading this right now, they've only won twice in 16 games, which is absolutely shocking. And that does include 4 consecutive losses too. I'm wondering whether, because, you've seen a lot of clubs in the past keep their managers after relegation. We're seeing it at the moment with Steve Cotterill at Forest Green. I wonder, though, whether this is the right decision to make. And I know Darren Moore has had championship experience, League One experience as well. And this may sound absolutely daft, but I wonder whether he has the right experience to manage them in League Two. Somebody's going to clip this and make laughing stock of me next season once they do get promoted again under Darren Moore. But I do kind of like question their decision to keep him because, again, he hasn't set the world alight so far this season. And I feel that there are squads in League One at the moment who've done better with less resources than Port Vale have. And I don't necessarily think that Darren Moore has justified keeping his job. But a club who has kind of, and again, my transitions are absolutely dreadful at the moment, but a club or owners who have backed their club, should I say, is Tom Pitek at Carlisle United. He took over earlier on in this season, and he is committed to backing Carlisle's jump back into League One next season. And despite relegation from League One, the Piteks have emphasised their determination to strive for promotion next season. So, first of all, I love it when owners come out and say these kind of things. What do you make of Pitek actually coming out and backing his club next season? And in my opinion, their January signings in the transfer window was absolutely abysmal. They need to get that right next season, don't they, Rhys? So again, give me your thoughts on Pitek backing the club next season and their need to recruit better as well.
Yeah, they have to. I know it's easy to say, sort of looking back, but realistically, that January time, there was no sort of buzz, there was no spark, there was no these players have come in and sort of transformed the club. Nothing really happened. Again, similar to sort of the situation at Port Vale, they just sort of fizzled away. You look back at this. At the fact they beat Stockport in the playoff final last year, and you sort of hope that the momentum more than anything would have led to Carlisle surviving, but it simply wasn't enough. They could easily now be caught into a sort of trap between League One, League Two, where they just keep bouncing. Because you look through that side, and I think there's players in there that can do a job in League Two, but just can't step up in League One. So getting that recruitment right over the course of the summer, it's going to be critical. It really is, because it's going to be so easy now for that team to just sort of keep fading away and keep falling through. So it has to be the right decision, I think, to stick by the manager there, to be honest. I know we talk about Port Vale and Darren Moore perhaps needing sort of break up there. But let's not forget, these are new ownership. This is new ownership group as well. They've got their man who they want to bring in. The whole club at the moment just needs that unity.
And just quoting Ballum's comment right here, what do you make of many Americans buying Football League EFL teams? Interesting you say that, because that is a brilliant transition for our next story, because former San Diego Padres, I've absolutely butchered that name, executive chairman Ron Fowler has acquired a minority stake in Lincoln City, and that is alongside his son Andrew, and they now hold a 12.6 share in Lincoln's parent company. Look, I'm not going to lie here, because I don't know too much about this or what that means for Lincoln City. All I know is that that is good news for them, and that they will get more investment as well. So what are your thoughts real quickly on that?
It's great news for Lincoln fans as well, and it's probably come at a really, really good sort of period as well. They're probably favourites to sneak in and keep their spot in the top six in League One as well. And we talk about recruitment being so important. It's vital when you go from League One to the Championship, and that squad gets upgraded as well. So the new investment, as long as they keep within regulations, is going to be vital. So it's a really good sort of time for Lincoln as well. But it's now all about getting the recruitment right and going from there.
And now let's head on to tomorrow and the final day, because Carlisle, Port Vale and Fleetwood, they are already relegated, with Cheltenham still fighting for survival. Cambridge they have a crucial game tomorrow. They need a point against Port Vale to retain their League One status. So Cambridge, they couldn't they couldn't have hoped for better opponents on the last day, could you? Could they? So, what do you make of Cambridge United against Port Vale tomorrow? And do you see them surviving?
Yeah, this is a game for Cambridge. If you could pick out a game, it's the one you want, isn't it? It's not as if Port Vale have gone down sort of fighting tooth and nail. Their recent form has been, as you said, it's been really, really, really poor. So I can't see much of a fight from Port Vale to this Cambridge side. I think this Cambridge side is going to walk through, and there's no sort of question marks for me in terms of their survival. I mean, look at how impressive the likes of Gaston Academy has been for Cambridge. You look at the likes of Jack Lancaster. You go through that squad. I can name 6, 7, 8 names who have been fantastic at Cambridge this season. So they've got more than enough quality to stay up. I know you can look at teams with no pressure, and it is a free hit in a way for Port Vale. And you could look at it and you could go, well, okay, they got nothing to play for. They know their fate. They can just go out there and express themselves. But I've seen minimal, to be honest, in the time at Downmoor has been there as evidence to make me believe that they can actually go and do that. So for me, it's the ideal day. It's the ideal game for Cambridge, and it should be a comfortable one as well.
And of course, they're not the only team who could potentially get relegated on the final day. Burton and Cheltenham, they have some very big games indeed. Cheltenham are a team who I would quite like to talk about there because tomorrow their game is particularly important. And in my opinion, they are potentially favourites above Cambridge to survive. In the press this week, Darryl Clark was saying that he is getting his players motivated for their upcoming game against Stevenage, or away to Stevenage as well. Stevenage themselves have been in dreadful form as of late, dating back to even when Steve Evans was at the club. Out of those two, because I know I'm all over the place, this is quite a difficult final day to navigate. But out of the two, Burton Albion and Cheltenham, who do you potentially see getting relegated?
Again, look, it's so tight, and that game at Burton Albion got tomorrow away at Fleetwood. Fleetwood already, of course, relegated. So is that the team you go for just based off the fact that it could be an easier game? I'd say possibly Burton, but only just. I mean, only just. You look at Cheltenham's game away at Stevenage, and if Steve Evans was still in charge, I know form wasn't great, but potentially, I'd say Stevenage would be looking at that and licking their lips, to be honest. I know Stevenage now have got nothing to play for. But realistically, I think it's going to be Burton, but only just. I think going away to Stevenage, it's still a tough place to go to, with or without Steve Evans, with or without the recent form. And realistically, all Burton Albion actually need to do, if they get a point, that's realistically all they could need.
And let's head now over to League Two. And as always, before we go into the news and anything else, let's talk about the teams who have already been promoted. This happened a few weeks ago now, Rhys. I can't remember whether we spoke about it or not, but Wrexham, real quickly, they have been promoted. They've had an absolutely brilliant season. What do you make of Wrexham?
Look, I know I can imagine the comments that are now going to sort of come through the chat, and the comments we'll get after with record and people watch this back. People go, oh yeah, but it's easy when you got loads of Rob McAnally and Ryan Reynolds sort of backing your club and pumping the millions of pounds in that they have into the club and into the infrastructure as well. But to complete back-to-back promotions, no matter the investment that you've been given, no matter the players you've got at your disposal, is still a mammoth task to do. And the fact that they've done it is absolutely incredible. The only thing, well, not the only thing I didn't like, but something that's really stuck in my head from the sort of celebrations from that, he's like read sort of board members, and I can't remember who it is. Someone in the chat may be able to remind me. There's a board member came out and said that this club is a championship club. No, it's not. It's nowhere near. League One is such a difficult club. We see teams get relegated from the Championship who really, really struggle in that league. And you look at Wrexham's squad, you look at the amount of contracts they've got to renew as well. Arthur and Conquer goes back to Arsenal after being on loan. Mark Howard, it's been a long day, my voice. Mark Howard, Rob Layton, Liam Hall, Callum McVadson, Aaron Hayden, Jordan Tunnicliffe, Ben Tozer, James McLean, Luke Young. They're all out of contract in the summer. A massive rebuild is needed at Wrexham as well. I know how impressive Paul has been, hit the mid-20s in terms of goals this season. I don't think you can actually rely on Paul Mullen in League One, just because I think it's such a competitive league.
Ballum asks, some people say Wrexham need a better manager. What do you make of Phil Parkinson? Because I've been saying this all season, that if they let him go, they can easily bring in a better manager, maybe like a marquee name. So Phil Parkinson, I think a lot of people overlook him simply because of the blips that they've had this season. But what do you make of him?
Yeah, it coming back to that same argument when you look about the money and the playing squad he's had at his disposal. But let's not forget, as a coach as well, to get the right tune out of these players is simply fantastic as well. And if it wasn't for, as well as Stockport County have been, they had won the league, Wrexham, as well. It's really difficult to talk about a manager potentially sort of losing his job after a sort of promotion from League Two. It's really weird to sort of have that conversation. But we have had question marks over Parkinson throughout the season as well. And the pedigree of coach that they could attract would be absolutely phenomenal. But realistically, I think, although we've had question marks over him, the investment that squad's going to get over the course of this summer, and the fact that Parkinson's proved himself as well to get this promotion, should be enough for him to start the season as Wrexham boss in League One. I don't see a sort of particular argument to say that he should be gone, because I just think if you're going to guarantee, if you're going to seal promotion and gain promotion as well, I just don't see how we can justify a manager losing his job.
So a comment that made me laugh. Did you know Paul Mullen had a stand named after him at Cambridge and he left for Wrexham? I absolutely loved that. And BVB David, no, it's fine. Well done. Not like an... yeah, again, I'm absolutely butchering comments today. Rhys, do you know how you said earlier on that you've had a long day? Do you know what it's like when the brain just melts? My brain is absolutely melted. I was just staring at the screen then, and I could feel my brain literally dripping down my face. Have patience with me this evening. When we get to the questions, I'm going to absolutely butcher them. We might as well laugh at it because it is going to be.
Why not
It
laugh,
might as
man?
well be. It might as well be a variety comedy hour when we get to the questions, because my brain has literally melted. So apologies for butchering your comment there, BVB David. I'm going to be like this a lot this afternoon. I'm going to try and find the perfect transition right here. But I can't find one. Let's talk about Stockport before I absolutely butcher the poor Stockport faithful, because Stockport, they have potentially won the league. They got promoted with a 2-0 win over Morecambe. Yeah, I mean, I thought Stockport County celebrated a stress-free win actually over Morecambe. What do you make of them? And under the guidance of Dave Challoner, is it fair to say that they're going to enjoy life in League One?
Yeah, they should have. And the accomplishment that Stockport have actually got, I think it's been quite underwhelming, to be honest, because I was looking through sort of a few media channels and everything seems to be about Wrexham. There was an article online about from the Daily Mail, and the headline was that Stockport have ruined Wrexham's season because Wrexham missed out on the title and Stockport clinched it. But the sort of job that's happened at Stockport this season has been phenomenal. It's their first Football League title since 1967, and it's one that's absolutely fully deserved. It was secured, obviously, in the 5-2 away win at Notts County. But something I want to sort of really praise the Stockport side about is their mentality. To lose to Carlisle in the playoff season last season, in the playoff final last season, and to come out this season with the mentality that they have, the drive that they have, the togetherness, and that sort of elite sort of brain, sort of power as well, do that. It's been phenomenal. Like I say, the jump from League One to League Two, it's one that gets overlooked in football, to be honest, quite easily. But it's a massive jump up, especially for any team down in League Two to sort of try to get sustainable in League One. It's a tough ask, but realistically, why can't they do it? They've shown that their mentality is second to none.
I've made an absolute cock of myself once again. I remember it happening a couple of weeks ago. He meant Unterhaching, who are a team in Germany. You know how bad I am at pronunciations. I was just staring at that, trying to rack in my brain whether I could say it, whether I had enough energy to even comprehend the spelling of that. It's one of those shows this evening. Bear with us. But let's go on to the final day, and of course, some of the teams down at the bottom as well. Mansfield have also been promoted, but we will talk about that once we do round up the final confirmed promotions and relegations in League One. But before we talk about the final day, and my brain is all over the place, I'd quickly like to talk about Forest Green Rovers because they've been relegated to the Vanarama National League, and I want to talk about them because Steve Cotterill has claimed that he is going to stay at the club. In my opinion, Forest Green Rovers have been absolutely abysmally owned this season. They've appointed managers who don't necessarily fit the mould of a club who need to survive in League Two. And Steve Cotterill, he has had his hands tied. So real quickly, Forest Green relegated. Barely surprising, is it, Rhys?
They're probably the one team sort of down in League Two that no one in this chat, no one's surprised they've gone down. They've been there the majority of the season. They've only won 9 games this season as well. There's been no sort of no spark really from the sort of fun from the first day of the season up to where we are now. There's been no reason for me realistically to get excited about this sort of Forest Green team. There's been no reason for me to think, okay, this is a turning point. This is where they change. This is where they kick on. I just haven't seen that sort of that fight, to be honest. I mean, look at managers have had this season. Duncan Ferguson, David Horseman, the absolute car crash that was Troy Deeney. When you have these sort of roadblocks in a season, to try to stay up, it's just not going to be possible, is it? You had both the CEO and director of football, they both changed as well. So the amount of changes that have happened, the amount of sort of managerial, I know we laugh at Watford for the managerial sort of slideshow, if you like. It's been the same at Forest Green as well. There's been no sort of manager sort of standout either. And realistically, controversially, I think they need to keep Steve Cotterill, to be honest, purely on the experience. They're in a position right now where I don't think they can realistically afford to take a risk. I think they have to go down the safe, and with Steve Cotterill's experience, that's probably the way to go.
So let's talk about what could happen on the final day in regards to relegation. Sutton, who are 23rd at the moment, they trail Colchester, who are 22nd at the moment, by 3 points and must secure a victory against MK Dons, while hoping for a defeat for Colchester again.
Your mic's gone, mate. We can't hear you, bud. You're on mute.
These things have to happen. So I'm going to start that again. Sutton United, 23rd. They trail Colchester, 22nd, by 3 points and must secure a victory against MK Dons while hoping for a defeat for Colchester against Crewe. The team's goal difference stands at -25, while Colchester's is slightly better at -21. And I just want to get a weird kind of like final day scenario up for you. So a 1-0 defeat for Colchester and a 3-0 triumph for Sutton, or a 2-0 Colchester loss and a 3-1 victory would leave both sides on the same number of points, goal difference and goals scored. The teams cannot be separated by head-to-head results as both games ended 1-1, so relegation will be decided by a little-known fifth stat: total games won, with Sutton having one less win than their rivals. So It's been a hell of a show. My brain can't comprehend that. Rhys, you do my job for me by comprehending what that possibly means and how bizarre a rule is that.
It's crazy to see this. It's been so long. I think I was sat on 25 odd years before I've had to go back to the sort of fifth way of actually relegating the team. But realistically, I know you have the ifs and buts with the scorelines with Colchester or whatnot. But realistically, Sutton United are the team that are going down. I know they're away at an MK Dons side who have secured their place in the playoffs. So will MK Dons take it a little bit easy? Perhaps, maybe. Wales, I know Colchester's game against Crewe. Crewe need a point in that one. And it could be interesting as well to see how that game, Colchester against Crewe, actually does play out. I believe it's on the Sky as well. And both sides in that game, Colchester and Crewe, just need a point. We could just see a really, really bland affair by Colchester, and it could be a really boring game because a draw in that game between Colchester and Crewe would relegate Sutton. It doesn't matter what Sutton sort of do from there anyway. I know that question marks over Colchester and their squad, and then the Cowleys coming in, and all these question marks I've had over Colchester. But next season for them, should they survive this season, they will. Next season for Colchester, they have to improve. They have to get this recruitment right, because if not, they'll be bang on favourites to go down next season. I know that there's been a couple of sort of conspiracy theories, and I don't like to really entertain them too much about everything with the sort of pictures as well. And people are saying with Colchester that they've done it on purpose with their playing surface just so they can sort of come out again towards the end of the season and reignite a sort of push to stay up. But realistically, Colchester have just about done enough, and Sutton are the team that are going down.
And let's quickly talk about the playoff picture, because maybe we should have focused on that earlier on when talking about League Two. Crewe currently are 6th placed. They face a risk of dropping out of the playoffs if they lose, with Barrow 7th and Crawley 8th, both vying for a spot. And Doncaster, whose form have been absolutely impeccable as of late, they're 5th place at the moment. They need only a point against Gillingham, who are obviously out of the playoff picture, to secure their spot in the playoffs. So, God, it's going to be a very exciting final day in the playoffs as well. What do you expect to see happen, Rhys?
It's been an absolutely frantic season, and the absolute sort of turnaround in form we've seen at Doncaster has been absolutely insane. Only a few months ago, just before January, they were looking like a team in real danger of sort of getting relegated. But now, here we are. The turnaround has been absolutely fantastic. They're now in a position where they're actually the informed side going into the playoffs. And if you'd have said that before January, you'd have been laughed off here. You really would have been. And you sort of look at the games matter. You look at Barrow's game against Mansfield. Mansfield, of course, have already secured promotion, so realistically, Mansfield got nothing to play for, so Crawley may sort of benefit from that maybe in their game against Grimsby, because you expect Crawley to pick up 3 points at home there. But this final day, it's just going to be absolutely insane. Both sort of top end of League Two and sort of slight thing that may happen towards the bottom as well. But it's been like this all season, the excitement in the air in League Two. And this is why we say the EFL as a whole is so much more entertaining than the sort of Premier League. Because with that league, who's going to finish in the top 3. It just depends on which order. So the fact that the likes of Doncaster are up there, the fact that Barrow are competing, look at what Stockport have done as well in order to secure the title. Mansfield have done incredibly well as well. It's a wide open league.
And I think that more or less does it for the analysis of both League One and League Two on the final day. We're now going to go over to the questions. Thank you very much to everybody who's joined us this evening. This is the part of the show where there will be a bit of dead air because I am reading through the comments. I should really get them lined up. I might as well just be humming in the background just to entertain people. So whilst I'm reading through the comments, is Andy Holt of Accrington Stanley still allowed on here? The one thing that I will ask you kind of based off the question, Andy Holt has kind of like been campaigning against the new rules which could potentially be implemented on the FA Cup. How important is it for owners to be so vocal? In case people don't know, replays could potentially be scrapped in the FA Cup. So what are your thoughts, Rhys, on owners vouching for replays to stay?
It needs to happen. We all saw, I won't go into too much of a rant because I think last week I really did have a massive rant on here, to be honest, about the replays being scrapped. When the EFA released that second statement, sort of confirming the fact that replays will be scrapped, it goes to show the sort of the headspace of people in charge. And the only way that we're actually going to get a reversal of decision is by all ownerships, from Championship right down to League Two, and all the teams involved within the National League as well. Every ownership group, every owner needs to come out, make statements. I know clubs already need to come out, make statements, and make their stance absolutely clear, because that's going to be the only way that we see any sort of change.
And here is our first question. I totally forgot about the team of the season, so I'll add that in at the end as a question as well. And the question is, who do you see going down from the Championship? Oh, you've done a Ben. You're on mute as well.
I was just
I call that doing a Ben.
If I think for next season and for the last couple of shows this season, we should set up like a little jar somewhere. And every time we do that, we have to put sort of a fiver in it, and then we have drinks at the end of the season, because we'd be
swear jar. Yeah, and maybe give some of the money to like the people who watch as well. Maybe a swear jar for drinks for them too.
Well, Ballon would be absolutely minutes, wouldn't he? It's just you sort of talk about the sort of Championship relegation, and I went from sort of Stoke down and looked at the teams who are down there and the fixtures that have got to come up in the next two sort of games. And there's a massive game this weekend, isn't there, between Huddersfield and Birmingham. And from a neutral point of view, looking at that battle, I would love to see a draw. So I think, it keeps everything sort of wide open. But realistically, for my three to go down, I think Rotherham might just go down, to be honest. I know they put up a really good fight, Rotherham, but I think they might just go down. Huddersfield Town would be my other one. And then it comes down to goal difference out of Sheffield Wednesday and Birmingham. So I've got them both finishing on 47 points. So that will just come down to goal difference.
And let's see what other questions there are. Balham, is the EFL corrupt? Bury were kicked out. So many problems across the league. How long will this current Watford manager stay up? So we already answered the Watford one. Is the EFL corrupt? Real quickly, the EFL, the problem that I have with the EFL isn't necessarily them, it's the FA as well. And I think there needs to be more kind of like communication between both the FA and the EFL. Because I think the EFL is a little more fairly ran than the FA, who only really cater to the Premier League, as we've seen this week with the whole debacle surrounding the FA Cup. So, yeah, I mean, the EFL, I don't necessarily think they're corrupt. I think they're a little fairer than the FA, but I would probably argue that, and I hope I don't get sued for saying this, that the FA could potentially be corrupt. Again, that's just my opinion. I'm not slandering anybody. So what are your thoughts on the question, Dave, Rhys?
I'm going to be careful just so I don't get this show or myself sort of in trouble, but I will say that I think there is several holes within the EFL that certainly need to be looked at. You look at the fit and proper ownership test, you look at the FA Cup replays, and you look at the fact that teams, like the comment suggests there, the teams at Bury that were just allowed to sort of fizzle out and sort of die, and thankfully they are being sort of resurrected now. But there's definite questions to be had. I think the bigger problem isn't necessarily with the EFL. I think the bigger problem is with the FA and the Premier League. I think in this country, we're catering too much to the big six, shall we say. And again, I don't really follow the Premier League too much, but I don't think anyone in the chat watched the Brighton against Manchester City game. But the two penalties, I think the first one was a penalty on Foden, or it was a free kick just outside the box, and that was given as a foul. And then the one on, I can't remember the Brighton player's name, to be honest, but a very, very similar foul in the penalty area wasn't given. So I think it's very sort of easy to see that there is a level of, I won't say corruption, just because I don't say too strong of a word. I will say there's a slight bias, I'll say, towards the big six, and we're catering too much for them. And for me, realistically now, I never thought I'd say these words, but I'm all in favour for this European Super League, because I think the quicker that these big six still want to be here, the better. They can go, they can do their European tours or whatever they want to do, and we can get English football back to the way it needs to be. Because you look at the statement, and I think it was Tottenham Hotspur, they made a statement out today that they're having a post-season friendly out somewhere. I think it's in Asia, I think. They're having a post-friendly game out there, and you think, they can go off and they can do that, but they can't do FA Cup replays. It seems to me it's very much we're catering too much for them, and we're not catering for the full pyramid.
And I'm just going to pop off a minute to sort out my dogs real quickly, but I'm going to leave you real quickly with this question. Why do teams such as Rotherham, Peterborough and Barnsley go up and down in League One at times? We call them yo-yo clubs, don't we, Rhys? So I'll be 2 minutes. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if I take Rotherham for a second, I think the main problem there is when you look at Rotherham is actually the fact of their recruitment. I think you look at the board and you look at the ownership problems that Rotherham are sort of littered with, and that's where the main issue comes from. I think in terms of football, I don't think that the ownership board and the directors are actually fully, I won't say informed with football, but aren't realistically in the right mindset of where the club actually are. I think that's a massive problem. For too long now, Rotherham especially have just been allowed from the ownership group down. It's acceptable now to be a yo-yo team. And I know you get your sort of payments from sort of promotion and relegation and whatnot, but that can't be beneficial for the club because all you do, you're just yo-yoing. There's no sustainability. And that's why realistically, I think that Rotherham actually do need to have 3 or 4 seasons down in League One to actually properly rebuild. And like I said, when we talked about Steve Evans earlier, I don't realistically fully get on board with that appointment, to be honest, because I do think he's a manager who's going to get them straight back up. And we're in that predicament again with Rotherham where we're up, down, up, down, up, down. But in terms of an actual sort of fully agreement sort of to it, I think it all comes down to a sort of recruitment sort of thing, to be honest. And I think it's down to a mindset. You look at Peterborough, they're always there or thereabouts. And then you look at the mentality and the team they fielded against Cheltenham, with no disrespect, wasn't competitive. And I think that speaks sort of volumes for the sort of club as a whole to an extent as well. So I'd say it's down to recruitment. I'd say it's down to mentality from board members as well. I think about knowing where your club are.
So promoted teams just straight relegated from the Premier League next season. Brentford and Brighton aren't big size clubs for the Premier League. Brentford, I reckon, could get relegated from the Premier League next season simply because, and my weird theory with Brentford is that they started going downhill when their manager went on Friday Night Football and revealed all of his tactics for the world to see. But that's just my tinfoil hat weird little theory on Brentford. And Brighton, they're an unbelievable club. If they got rid of De Zerbi, then they might struggle, but I can't see them getting relegated. One more question before we do go on to the championship team of the season. Let's just see what there is. If I can't see any, then we will of course go to the team of the season. Can Wrexham go up again, Rhys? So Wrexham, rich club, Hollywood owners, can they get promoted into the championship? And I read somewhere that they're aiming for the Premier League in the next 5 years.
What is it with these ownerships that come in and just think that they can just buy leagues? I don't think you can. League One especially, it's such a physical league. You can't have these sort of flair players and expect them to sort of get through. Look at when we were in League One and we had the likes of, I'm sure, I hope people know this name, of Bersant Salina. He's a player who very highly rated. I know he's sort of fallen off a cliff now, very highly rated, but really struggled in League One. It's because it's a very, very physical league and you need that know-how. For me, a lot of it will depend on the summer and how they recruit and the contracts that they sort of look at and go from there. But I can't see it. I'll be honest. I think League One, we're seeing it in terms of playoffs with the turnaround and lots of Lincoln as well, and how competitive that league is. And to sort of go into it so naively, it's going to come back and it's going to bite you. To get up to the Premier League within 5 seasons, when you're only in League One, but you're now in League One, to me, it's just delusion. The football pyramid, it doesn't work like that. And I know what's the bet now in 3 years when they're up there, people play us back to me and go, oh, look how wrong you are. But I just can't see it. Even if they can get promoted out of League One next season and they're a championship club, are you telling me that Wrexham, straight promotions, are going to be in a good enough position not to just survive in the championship, but to actually mount some sort of push for top 6? I can't see it. Within that league itself, you've got teams that have come down from the Premier League with the financial backing through the parachute payments and whatnot. You've got clubs in that league with no disrespect, the likes of Bristol City, Swansea, Cardiff, teams who are not in danger of going down, but also don't push for sort of top 6, and they're stuck in that sort of mediocrity, if you like. So to have the sort of vision that they have, it's tunnel vision, and to be that naive, it's only going to come back and sting you.
Now let's go on to another question. Is Rhys vegan? One final question.
Well, I'll put it this way. I've got a pack of 4 sausage rolls next to me from Greg's, so definitely not a vegan.
So let's go on to the team of the season. And I think this week we might just focus on the Championship, then do League One and League Two next week once those leagues have been wrapped up. I know the Championship technically isn't wrapped up at all yet, obviously, with what is happening at the moment. But the Championship team of the season has been revealed, blocking out both of our faces. Starting from their back, Herminason, I'm more for that pronunciations. He is in goal. Leif Davis is left back with Greaves and even Ampadu as centre backs. Kyle Walker-Peters occupies the right back slot. Gabriel Sara and Drewsbury Hall, who've both had magnificent seasons, occupy the midfield. And Sammy Smodics as attacking midfield. And in between him is Morgan Whitaker and Crescencio Somerville with Ruta up front. So there are a couple of things right there that I would change. Rhys, what are your thoughts on the EFL team of the season for the Championship?
Oh, for goodness sake. There's another 5 gone in the jar. There's a few positions there that I don't really agree with, to be honest. I think I'll start from the back. I'll start in goal. I'm not saying that Hermansson's been poor by any stretch of the imagination. He's been really, really good for Leicester. But to say he's the best keeper this season in the league, for me, it's a stretch. It's a really long stretch. We mentioned it when talking about Rotherham and Victor Johansson. For me, he is the best sort of keeper of the season. You look at the saves he's made time and time again for Rotherham, and you look at the points he's saved them. And if it wasn't for Johansson, realistically, Rotherham would have been down a long while ago. He's kept them in games. Then the other, I mean, I could talk realistically about the centre back options, the right back, and striker as well up front. But I'll talk about striker for a second. How Adam Armstrong didn't get in this team, to me, it's nonsense. It really is. It almost makes you sort of question the legitimacy of the team of the season, because Jorginho Ruter has been up and down. You look at the stats: 6 goals, 17 assists. He's been more of a sort of playing off the striker under this Daniel Farke Leeds United side. We've got Adam Armstrong sitting there on 20 goals, 13 assists for the Saints. How can you not say that he deserves to be in that team? And to say that if there's one player, forget you've seen this for a second as well, this team of the season. If I had told you from Southampton there's going to be one player in team of the season, you wouldn't think Kyle Walker-Peters. You'd think Adam Armstrong.
Yeah, and I'd pick Pereira over Kyle Walker-Peters because I think Pereira, he's actually been more or less shifted to a midfield spot. But like, if I had to put him in there, I would keep him as right back, and he's been absolutely magnificent in my opinion. Leif Davis, spot on right there. I would, due to my bias, maybe put in Sam Morsy, but I can't fit him over the likes of Sarah and Dewsbury Hall simply because I think they've had magnificent seasons in themselves. Sammy Schmodix, I reckon, is absolutely spot on. He's had an absolutely unbelievable season, and I think it inevitably goes without saying that he'll probably be off to the Premier League next season. A player who has really impressed me this season, and a name that doesn't always get bandied about, is Adam Armstrong. I think, again, most of us would agree here that he has had a better season than Jorginho Ruter. So Armstrong, I would have felt a bit miffed if I was him for not being included in that. I know Jorginho Ruter has 15 assists this season, which is incredibly impressive indeed. And I'm surprised that Fatawu hasn't been included on the wing as well. He's a young player, he's just come in, and he's been very impressive as well, in my opinion. And before we do wrap up the show, manager of the season is Kieran McKenna. Real quickly, surprisingly, as an Ipswich Town fan, I wouldn't have included Kieran McKenna. I would have maybe have had Danny Rowell as my manager of the season. What do you make of that, Rhys? Manager of the season being Kieran McKenna.
Even if I take my obvious bias out of the situation, I think it's probably the one that makes the most sense out of the three that were nominated. If you look at the job that Daniel Farke done at Leeds, look, it's fantastic. I'm not discrediting it by any stretch of the imagination what he's done, but you look at the squad, and that squad should be top two. There's no question about that. And if we sneak into that second spot, it's remarkable. So I think there's more pressure on Leeds to have actually done it. There's more of an expectation there as well. But the name that sort of threw me off as to why he was in that, and I mentioned it on the show at the time, was Liam Rosenior. I think he's actually almost underperformed when you look at how the sort of caliber of player that they brought in January and the attack and options that they've got to be where they are. Realistically, that squad is a top six squad quite comfortably, to be honest. So I don't understand how he was included, and I probably would have had Carlos Corberan of West Brom in there as well, to be honest, because I think West Brom have been absolutely fantastic. Yes, okay, you can question the away form, but their home form and the likes of Grady D and Garner has been absolutely fantastic. But it probably is the right choice to go for McKenna. This is a squad that's come from League One, approximately 8 or 9, depending on the game. 8 or 9 players that start for us every week also started in League One while we're in there as well. So the fact we're taking this squad as a collective, and there was a quote, I believe it was from Chris Sutton, I want to say, or Andy Hitchcliffe, it's one of the guys off Sky, who said, "We aren't a team of superstars." And at the time, I took that as a bit of an insult, to be honest with you. I think as a bit of, okay, they're just downplaying Ipswich, but actually, it actually describes where we are almost perfectly, to be honest. Because it shows, well, actually, we've got that sort of, that group sort of integrity as well. And you're looking at players sort of going that team this season. And past Leif Davis, it's very difficult to make a genuine case for any other player to be included.
And I think you're spot on right there. And that does mark the end of the show. Thank you very much to everybody who's joined us this evening. First of all, Rhys, where can people find you on social media? Another one for the jar, unfortunately.
Oh, come on. I'm going to scrap the idea of a jar, I think, because I'm going to be skint by the end of the season. It's always Twitter, never X. It's at RhysCurtis14.
And you can find me at OTB_Benjamin. You can find Over the Bar on Twitter at OverTheBarFB. You can also find us on YouTube if you simply type in Over the Bar YouTube, football onto the search bar. You can find us on Twitch as well under the same plugs as well. And of course, Over the Bar does have some fantastic content. Ian Bradley does some fantastic match day vlogs. He will be doing one again this weekend, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And of course, there is a very good vlog coming up after the show today, which will be focused on the Bundesliga. So don't forget to give that a watch as well. If you are watching over on YouTube, then hit like and subscribe. Even if you've accidentally stumbled upon the show, give it a like and a subscribe as well. So yeah, thank you very much to everybody who's joined us this evening. It has been a long one today. We're both tired. I've spouted some absolute nonsense today. Looking forward to speaking to you all next week when League One and League Two will indeed be wrapped up. So I'm venting right now because I can't find the outro. I've just found it. See you all next week.